Hello, Internet family. This is Anjanette Potter, also known as Adam's Rib, and you are listening to Fridays Live at Midnight. So, I'm not going to be on here long, but I wanted to honor my word of, when I say I'm going to do something, doing it. So, this week I have been pondering a lot on the whole Black Women Who Divest movement. And last week, this past Monday, I was talking about the whole issue of what constitutes divestment between divest and just plain old interracial dating. So a Black woman who has divested, which I'm not doing, I'm anti-divestment. And I'm anti-divestment because anti-divestment is starting to sound a whole lot like anti-Black. Now, one of the problems that I have with the divest movement is because I can remember when I was younger that there would be people who would, tell certain people they're not Black enough. I went to this church and I remember the Holy Spirit saying, what you're getting out of that, out of some of the people there is that whole not Black enough mentality, only it's manifesting is not saved enough. And I have a problem with that because we have so many denominations in this country and really worldwide, that you have people who think that because you don't belong to the denomination that they belong to, that means you're not saved. And that's not true. You don't have to belong to any particular denomination to be saved. And you're not Satan because you don't belong to that denomination. Now, there's a few denominations that are very what people call zealous behind their teachings. And the bad thing is if you look biblically, most of the stuff that they teach isn't even backed up biblically. Their teachings concerning women and men. The Word of God says that there is neither male nor female. And the whole concept behind forgiveness. Like I said before, I left, not too long ago, probably within the last 10 years, left a church that may as well been a front for human trafficking. Okay, well, you hear a lot of weirdness. When you hear a lot of weirdness and you hear a lot of sexual misconduct, especially when you hear teachings that don't protect women and children sexually, it's time to start looking toward the door and finding out where all the exits are. Because God is not molesting children or women. He's not telling husbands to molest wives. It's just, crazy. So, to get back to on topic, God is also not allowing Black people to trade other Black people to white people. So, right now I'm going into I guess you could say the second part of why I am anti-divestment. Now, when I was younger, there used to be a whole lot of Black guys who dated white or married white or slept white, depending on, what the goal is, that, would come at Black women and tell Black women all kinds of things that are wrong with them as to why they're going to another ethnicity rather than just own that for whatever reason, that's the way they're going with their romantic life. And so instead of just owning their own stuff, they try to make it Black women's fault that they are going in the direction that they are romantically. Now, I kind of feel the same way about the Black women who call themselves divesting. Okay? rather than own that maybe they feel like other groups of men are more to their liking, or they would rather go in that direction rather than fool with black men. Maybe they've had a bad history with black men. Maybe they've had a bad history, you know, with the black men that they've dealt with, and they just are feeling like they want to take a break from black men or whatever. I'm not going to say I don't understand that, but the same negativity that you can get out of black men, you can also get out of men of other ethnicities. So if you want to go that direction, I've already talked about my ideas with interracial dating. And that is, my personal preference. I prefer to be married to a black man. But I was open to the thought that, my husband may not be black. And I'm a person that tends to evaluate character more than anything else. So, when someone is stepping to me, first of all, if you're trying to lead me in a way that's contrary to what the Bible says is God's word for my life, or God's will for my life, or what the Holy Spirit is saying is God's will for my life, I'm not trying to fool with that. And I don't care who your pastor is. Okay, too many people have their salvation in their pastor's briefcase. And they think that because they're following the wrong man of God, that you're supposed to follow that man of God too. If whatever it is you believe, if it can't be confirmed scripturally, like I said before, when I was talking about Rhema versus Logos, if your Rhema does not match up with the general written word of the scriptures, chances are it's not God. Okay, and way too many women have gotten got by some guy who swore up and down that it was God's will for them to sleep together without being married. I had to leave a church because someone was using witchcraft to try to make me think that God wanted us to move in together. And that person happened to be that pastor's brother. And I was like, I don't believe in letting Satan trick you. The word of God talks about being up on the schemes of the enemy, because he looks to kill, steal, and destroy. Okay. And so one of the most common ways that people become victims of unscrupulous pastors and church leaders is when they start allowing people to tell them that something is God's will that isn't. So telling women and children or whoever, this is God's will, and it's not God's will. Now, the word of God talks about being led aside by our own lust and enticed. Okay, which means, watching those things that have the ability to tempt us after the flesh. He could be a good-looking man, made exactly the way you want, the very type of man you want, and he's saying everything that you would want him to say, or she's saying everything that you would want her to say as a woman. Okay? Now, it's bad enough when you are the same color and you have to deal with that kind of stuff, but then you have people who come up with things racially, which complicates things even more. We're not going to act like that at one time, black women weren't for sale, that we, didn't live on a plantation, that we weren't raped, that we weren't, sold a hill of beans to justify molesting us and harming us sexually. Okay. We're not going to act like certain things don't have that there aren't problems racially. And so when I hear people, trying to talk black women, getting mad at black women because they don't want to interracially date, I remember following someone's page one time, and I said, does it ever occur to you that black women may just find black men more attractive? And maybe what you're talking about isn't an option for them because that's not the direction. Those aren't the men that they find attractive. Now, I will tell people, as far as what I find attractive, people got levels. Okay, I tend to like black men that are a little bit, darker complected. But I'm not gonna. But I'm not ruling out light skinned men. I'm also not ruling out, men who may not be black, but also aren't white. One of the people that I follow was talking about the whole issue of white people who fetishize black people, and that is an issue. When you're looking to marry, you date different. You look different. You look at different things. When you're looking to marry, you're more likely to look at people's character other than, especially when you're saved. You're more likely to be looking at at character more so than you are different other things. There may be brothers out here that look good, but they got babies out here that they are not attending to. They look good, but they're already married or taken. They look good and smooth and everything, but maybe they don't seem to have any goals. They look good, but they look like they're just bringing you a bunch of drama. And it's funny to me how a lot of men like to be in the position of telling you whether or not they would get with you and what you need to get rid of before they would get with you, but haven't gotten rid of what they need to get rid of to get with you. Okay, they want you to. One of the things that I looked at, I was looking at some of the postings on social media, and so someone, I won't say no names, posted a post saying, if we used to date and we went to a particular restaurant, and we break up, you aren't allowed to go to that restaurant anymore. And I said, well, first of all, that would just make me really want to go, because if you're my ex, you don't get to no longer have any consideration for what I do. And too many people out here, and I saw one person comment and say, yeah, go back to your mediocre life. And I was just like, well, first of all, you don't know what taste I had in restaurants before we met. And I almost say this as a woman, beware of people who are always wanting to control people that they no longer date. Because that's a bit of a red flag. Okay, once you break up with somebody, and I'm talking about good and broke up, not, you still got feelings and you still trying to tap that because let's face it, it takes a while for some breakups to take. And if you were legally married to the person, it takes a while for you to even stop dealing with the person once you are no longer together. It isn't always that easy to come apart from someone after you decide to no longer be together. And so when I see people still trying to control their ex, yeah, I got a problem. First of all, I don't like men who are always trying to control women in the first place. And I can remember a few dating situations that I got into that every time I turned around, that some of them weren't completely delivered from their ex yet, or they had unresolved issues with their ex. And it was just like their ex pretty much was trying to run our relationship. Now, let me say this. I wasn't going for it. And so when I was younger, they used to have a bit of a rule to not deal with men who have been divorced less than 6 months or have been broke up with somebody for less than 6 months. And they say that because it's too easy for the ex to decide to go nah, 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 and call them back, and then they wind up running back. And I can remember being in a situation when I was younger where I, called a guy back and decided I wanted him back. And during that time, he had met someone, and so he was, and it's shocking how quickly they can wind up sleeping with somebody. I think if y'all been reading about Neo lately, the whole so-called break baby. Some of these guys who wind up making babies while they're supposedly on a break from you. Or maybe it was somebody else, some TV personality that already have a lot of kids to begin with and wound up making a baby while he and his girl was apart. I think it might have been Young Jock from Love and Hip Hop. And so I was just like, I am so over men and antics. And I'm over it with men of all colors. My question to men anymore is, when is the last time you entered a woman's life and weren't bringing them drama? I don't want to hear no more about women or how they dress, their weight, and all this different stuff if all you know how to do is go into women's life and be bringing a bunch of nonsense. And I say that at every station. Because at every station, there's a man bringing some woman drama, whether they're famous, whether they're wealthy, whether they're poor, whether they're, homeless and living in an alley or living in a mansion. For whatever reason, it seems like men just seem like they cannot enter a woman's life, and they can be your pastor. I left a church because it seemed like no matter what, in a denomination, because it seemed like no matter what these pastors were doing, they could not only could they not stop bringing women drama, they continued to keep co-signing on other men bringing you drama, which means you could say no to a situation and they'll still be trying to get you to go along with that situation. So my question is, when is the last time you entered a relationship and there wasn't no drama? Okay. And I'm saying this and make no mistake, regardless of where they are on that relationship paradigm, if they're calling themselves, entertaining somebody else. No. I'm over men who want to entertain. I'm over, and I mean all the drama, whether it's substance abuse drama, can't manage your money drama, living in an alley drama and looking for some place to live drama, or any other type of drama, any type of other woman drama. Okay. I remember one of the scenarios that made me question this pastor and really question some of the people in this church was that there was a man in there who had a woman that he was dating that also went to that same church. And they kept trying. It was one of those situations where they were messy. Okay, if they didn't want you seeing a person, then they would all of a sudden decide that somebody else in the church that you weren't even thinking about and didn't like was supposed to be your husband. And I got tired of it. Like, first of all, who somebody decides to date ain't your business. And some of y'all are too addicted to the soaps for me. But it became a hot mess because every time that you would, like, they would put somebody before you or a situation before you, And you exercise your God-given right to say no, and then it's World War III from there because they've decided that it's God's will. I'm like, I can't be around y'all. Y'all are too much. But it was just one of those things where they just continued. If there was a way to bring drama into a woman's life, they would find it. So I'm like, well, isn't he dating so and so? I'm like, I'm not. I don't get down like that. Like, no, if he already has a girlfriend, I'm not interested. I don't date men who already, I don't date men who already have girlfriends. I don't date men who already have wives. I don't date men who are already engaged. If they're living with a woman, I don't mess with them then either. And this particular denomination didn't seem to have no boundaries of that sort. And it was almost like they were trying to groom. It's like they were trying to groom the wife-worthy wives into not leaving if their husband cheat, but also grooming the rest of the women to be side pieces. If a man wanted to get with them and he already had somebody. So I was just like, I don't get down like that. And I'm not even attracted to this guy in the first place. So no, thank you. And so they continued. This guy must have followed me around church for a while. And so he would approach me and I would keep right on walking. And so he was like, it's wrong to keep, it's rude to not speak back when somebody speaks to you. And I said, I know. Okay. And the reason why I'm not speaking back is because you have a girlfriend and I'm not interested. Now, I had a situation, and so he got to the point where I had to get rude because he wouldn't take no for an answer, even though even with some of these spirits saying that you already have a girlfriend, ain't even enough for them to back off. And I'm not talking about just black men. I'm talking about white men too. And so finally I got to the point with this dude where he started, heading toward me. And so I headed toward his girlfriend and started talking to her because I already was getting along with her. And she was on the dance team with my daughter. And so I walked over to her and started talking to her and started a conversation with her. And he finally backed off and went the other way. And I'm just like, I don't trust men. I don't trust ministries that are headed by men who cheat. Okay, because they teach other men to cheat. Now you may say, well, what does this have to do with divest? Well, I kind of got off on a little bit of a tangent here, but it does have to do with it because it's almost as though if they can't get you off in a wrong area with black men, then they start trying you with white men and men of other colors and everything. And it's like, okay, sin is sin no matter what color you are. Sin is sin. Adultery is a sin no matter what color the man is. And I don't date men who are already involved no matter what color they are. And I'm not one of those women that a man doesn't look good to me until somebody else has him. Okay. And a lot of men, belong to what I call the Jermaine Dupri school of dating. Well, I'm dating Janet Jackson and it's getting me more offers to sleep around. And, many times men will try that game. It's like, okay, I've already told you no. I don't care who you're dating. Leave me alone. And I just recently had a situation similar to that where I was driving around in a parking lot waiting for my mom to come out of the store. And this man kept making obscene gestures like with his tongue. And so finally, because I wanted him to stop doing that, I went to his wife and I said, or the woman that he was with, and I said, I want you to know something. This guy here that you're with has been making obscene gestures at me with his tongue. And I thought you should know that, because I find that to be disrespectful since you're out with him, that he would do that with another woman while he's out with you. Now, I don't normally go to other women about their men because women who are in relationships can be a weird bunch, because a lot of them, I don't do that. And a lot of them will find a way to make their husband's behavior your fault. Okay. And I'm like, to me, that says you're not done being lied to. But a lot of women will try to make their husband's behavior your fault and make it your fault that their man is doing obscene things to you, and doing it while they're out with you. They don't even have the class to do whatever it is they're doing when you're not around. Okay? They have the audacity to do it while they're there with you. Now, how you handle situations like that is between you and him. I personally would, if it's our first date, it's our last date. If I'm out with someone and they make passes and do obscene things to another woman while they're out with me, then it's our last date. Period. No matter what color he is. And I'm really not entertaining any interracial dating at this time. So more than likely, and the reason why is because of the divest movement. Have you ever had people be involved in something and get on your nerves so bad till you're just like, you know what? It ain't happening no matter who it is. Because I've heard you enough and I'm ready for you to shut up. So divested Black women, I'm ready for you to be quiet. Because nothing that you have said has made dating outside of Black men any more attractive than what it would have been in the first place. If you are fetishizing men of other color, then just own it. And quit running around telling other women that they're missing out because your divestedness isn't helping you at all. There are times when I get so sick and tired of women, pestering other women. You just are not. My grandmother used to have a saying, and she used to say, misery loves company. And I'm convinced she's right. Because it seems like no matter where you are, if you don't fit the trope of being married and some man getting on your last nerves, then something must be wrong with you. I said this before with the whole Lizzo thing. There are people in this world that if you are not blonde hair, blue-eyed, and 98 pounds soaking wet, then you must be miserable with your life not being that way. Regardless of whether or not, regardless of you saying, and don't get me wrong, I'm single myself now. I'm believing to be married, and I'm not going to sit over here and say, I'm not going to play down wanting to be married. Not going to play it down. Yes, I want to be married, but I'm not miserable because I want to be married. And I think that people trying to make people miserable because you're not doing, so you decide to date only Black men, then you must be miserable because Black men are some of the most miserable people on the face of the earth. That would be the quotation of the divest movement. God forbid you should find a man your own color, be married, and be happy. And stick within your own, or God forbid you should be married to somebody of a different ethnicity and still be happy. Some people don't want you to be happy no matter what your choices are. God forbid you should be content with your relationship with Jesus Christ and be happy and experiencing the goodness of God in the land of the living. God forbid that you should be happy not doing something outside of the norm. God forbid you should be single and patiently waiting to meet your Boaz or whoever. God forbid you should be single and patiently waiting, saving yourself for marriage, and obeying God, and just dutifully waiting to be married to the right man. Oh my God, one of these churches is going to do everything they can to make you as miserable as they possibly can while you wait. Okay. As I said in the past, everybody evangelizes. It's always somebody. God forbid you should be straight and enjoy being straight. Let's go and pester you with a bunch of lesbians. Everybody evangelizes. People talk about Christians evangelizing and forcing their beliefs onto other people. But people force their beliefs onto Christians. Like I said before, it seems like if you are doing anything outside of what people think you should want to, aspire to do, there's some group trying to make you miserable. If you're wanting to be in music ministry, there are people who don't want you to be able to achieve it. So they'll do everything they can to make you miserable while you're waiting your turn, or believing for your place in the sun, or believing for your place in the spotlight, or whatever, or your opportunities to be able to minister. Like, some people just don't want you to be able to be, some people don't want you to be patient while you wait. They got to do everything they can to stir you up. Okay? And sometimes you have to, apply the word of God. You cannot be patient. You can't, as you patiently wait for whatever it is you are believing God for, there has to be the misery makers. And I remember somebody calling me miserable. Well, you're single, aren't you? And I'm like, that doesn't equal being miserable. I can be content. Or maybe I'm seeing someone and I'm believing for that person to be the one, and you still have to come and stir up some stuff there. And I'll be honest with you, this denomination gets on my nerves. You are not happy. It's an issue of they're not happy, and people always want to put that mess on women, but it's a lot of men that are like that. You can't be a single woman, be patiently waiting for your Boaz without some married guy showing up because they miserable in their marriage. They got to make you a miserable single woman. My thing with men is, my question with men of all colors, and I'm going to continue to say this: when is the last time you came into a woman's life and weren't bringing them drama? All colors. You can't be content with dealing with black men without somebody pestering you about white men. I personally think the whole divest movement is part of human trafficking. I think it's the devil, and I think it's just another way to get black women for unscrupulous white men. Because when is the last time any man, as a woman out here dating, and as a woman out here in the world, single and dating, when is the last time you as a woman of color have ever come across a white guy who didn't think that he was entitled and had difficulty getting a woman for himself? So these women who allow themselves to be used by men to pester other women need to start recognizing game when they see it. Anyway, so, to break down the difference between divesting. So divesting is basically cutting ties, which I'm never going to do, with the entire black community. And interracial dating is basically you met somebody that you really like a lot. They have the personality that you want and different other things, and they just happen to be a different color. So there's a big difference between the two. I am not every black person that dates outside of their ethnicity is not divesting. Many people date outside and maintain very strong ties to the community of their origin. So since I'm black and we're talking about black people, there are many black people, male and female, who date or marry outside of their ethnicity and still maintain strong ties to their ethnicity. And then there are those who, if you didn't look at them and physically know that they were black, you wouldn't know they were black. So I'm one of those people. So if I wound up dating interracially, which right now I'm not going to because white men are getting on my nerves and being used of the devil. So I have no interest. I have no interest in divesting at this point. I don't even have a interest in dating interracially at this point because, this denomination has got on my nerves so bad with it. But if I would probably be the one who dates interracially, which I have not done. All of my romantic partners have been the same color as I am. They've at least been within 50% of my own ethnicity, which means if they have a parent that's of a different color, it's not a deal breaker for me. Okay? If at least one of their parents is the same color that you are or is the same color as you are, I don't really count them as being an interracial marriage. Not really. So, or interracial dating. But, and believe it or not, there are more black men who divest than there are black women. God is never going to force you to divest. And I think that it's another cover for very abusive men to isolate women from their own community. There was a movie out years ago, and Sally Fields wound up playing the part of this woman. There was this white woman named Betty Mahmoudi. So she had married a guy who was from the Middle East, and I think he might have been some university professor or something. So they were married, and for something came up, and they wound up having to move back to the Middle East. And this guy happened to belong to the most oppressive part of the Middle East, the ones where the women can't go outside with their head uncovered, and all of those rules that they have for women. And so they went back to visit his family. And, like any culture, within any culture, you can get homesick for your culture. And so he got around his relatives, and then he started showing his behind. Like a lot of men here in the United States, they get around their people and they start acting a complete fool. So he started getting, started taking back, started reverting to type. He started, doing, applying some of his old world teachings to her. And it started to make for a very unsatisfying marriage. So in their culture, I know in many Middle Eastern cultures, it is customary if you divorce them, they get custody of the kids automatically. It's not like it is here in the United States. And keep in mind, this was probably the late 70s, early 80s, somewhere in there, or the mid to late 80s. So, I don't know how much things have changed. But they just have it was a part of the Middle East where they have a lot of very oppressive beliefs and teachings concerning women. And so the name of the movie, if you want to see it, if you want to look it up on YouTube, is called Not Without My Daughter. So she basically had to resort to kidnapping her own daughter in order to get over here to the United States with her daughter. Now, I don't know how that whole thing panned out. After that, you would have to look that situation up. But it's one of those things where you have to be careful of any man of any color that wants to isolate you from your culture. If you're white and if they're trying to, get you away from white people, if you're black and they're trying to isolate you from other black people, you have to be careful. Okay, and that's kind of what I see with the divest movement. I had to unload some of my other frustrations here this evening. I'm not going to apologize. But one of the reasons why I'm anti-divest is because I don't trust anybody who won't let you be who you are. If you're already black, if you're white and you're trying to date a black woman, she's black. That ain't changing. Either you're going to have to be okay with dating or marrying a black woman, or you just have to go on and find you a white woman. And I get a little sick and tired of that. Like, you knew who you were getting when you married that person. So one of the reasons I'm not with Divest Movement, because it seems also like a cover for some very abusive behavior on the part of white men toward black women. If a white man really is all that into you, they don't need you to separate from your entire community. You should be able to maintain strong ties to your community as long as they're not, interfering with your marriage. Okay? And as a man, you can't just claim something's interfering with your marriage just because you don't want your wife associating with people that are her color. Like, if I had to cut off associating with black people to marry a white guy, then that white guy would just be without a wife. So I tend to keep my ear to the streets when I keep hearing some of these terms and hearing some of this stuff. And I'm going to say this, as a person who has overcome an abusive relationship in my past, or several toxic relationships in my past, I know the lingo of the abuser. I know the lingo of abusive men. I know the lingo of men who are in the preliminary stages of being abusive. And one of the things that abusers love is to see if they can isolate you. Another thing that abusers love to do is distract you or see if they can get you off on a different path than what your goals indicate. Let's say that you are studying psychology and you're looking forward to having a successful career in mental health. Or maybe you're doing it because you're called to ministry and you feel like studying psychology would make you a better minister. Okay? And derail is the word that I'm looking to use. So many guys like to come into women's lives and they get a sick, twisted, perverted pleasure out of seeing if they can derail you from your goals. Now, it's one thing for someone to suggest, well, have you ever thought of blah, 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 blah? And you, oh, well, yeah, I was, considering that. Like me, I not only want to get into psychology, be in mental health, but I also want to do music therapy. Okay, so I'm keeping my ties to music ministry. Well, I've already had a battle with, that, like I said, former denomination. Well, so-and-so doesn't want to marry, dangling marriage as a carrot. Well, so-and-so doesn't really want to be married to a person who sings. So I finally had to say what the Holy Spirit told me to say. I don't wish to marry so-and-so, so I really don't care what he wants. Okay, so you have to be careful of the person who is trying to derail you. Like I said before, because I have been in several toxic relationships, because I have overcome, an abusive relationship, I tend to, my ears tend to, if you've ever seen dogs hear something and their ears kind of raise a little bit when they hear a sound that's distinctive, my ears tend to pick up like that when I hear lingo that sounds like it might be the preliminary grooming by an abuser. So when I hear stuff like, being forbidden to go places by an ex, which, like I said before, once you are broke up and you are not with that person, you have a right to do whatever the hell you want and go wherever the hell you want. I wish a guy that I used to date would tell me that I can't go to a restaurant just because we used to go. I wish that somebody that had a chance to wife me up and did not do so and did not marry me and now we're exes. If you are my ex, you have no opinions at all. Why should your ex be able to say anything about what you do? I wish somebody would tell me I can't be saved no more because they didn't pick me. You and whatever bitch you with that made that mess up can go fly a kite. I wish some black man that I broke up with would try to tell me that I can no longer be with black men and now I got to be white because he ain't with me no more. The quickest way to get me to tell you off and hand you your head is for you to try to, first of all, trying to being anything other than my legal husband and trying to boss me around is already a no-no. And I don't care if you call me hard to get along with because I'm saying it. I wish somebody would tell me what I can and can't do and you're anything other than my husband. I wish Muggs would get in my face and try to get entitled so I could give him an emergency appendectomy with my tongue. I'm not quitting anything. And I don't care who calls me difficult. One of the things I've always been a little suspicious of, especially with so-called religious men, is that whole using God to control women. You can't breathe without their permission and everything else, which is one of the reasons why so many women in church find men outside of church attractive, because they get sick and tired of what men turn into once they get a little bit of religion under their belt, some of them. But like I said, for one thing, being anybody other than my legal husband and trying to run me, I'm not down with that to begin with. But then, to be somebody that I'm not with anymore, and still trying to control me, nope. I think not. Now, I was looking at some clips from Big Bang Theory, and they had the one character, Raj. One of the things on YouTube they were asking, is Big Bang Theory racist? Which I said, no, I don't believe it's racist, or I wouldn't be looking at it. And then they talked about the treatment of Raj, the Indian character on that, where he would never, to me, I was like, well, if I were going to call any part of it racist, and this is just a theory, the fact that, the fact that the majority of the women, love interests that they kept writing into, arranging for his character to have, kept being white, that part would be racist to me. Okay, so if I were going to put my 2 cents in, because I do believe there's a lot of unconscious racism in entertainment, period. Like I said before, when someone was talking about Oscars so white, I was like, they've always been white. What are you talking about? Are you kidding? Like, there's a reason why Hattie McDaniel is celebrated as the first woman to win one. Okay, so they've been lily white the whole time. I recognize that there are a lot of white people that are very tone deaf when it comes to white privilege. Okay, you don't recognize that as white privilege, which is one of the reasons why when I picked the book Black Like Me, I picked the book Black Like Me. I picked the book Black Like Me because it was a white man disguising himself as a black man and seeing if there was anything to the whole issue of racism. Now, this was in the 60s, and they've since made a movie out of that book, you know, so you could see the movie. I watched the movie, and the movie was pretty interesting. And it was so interesting, the things that many of the white men that he was around confessed to him, especially when it comes to sexual harassment toward black women. Okay. So my, whole thing there, because this was a white person doing a study, not because I think that a white person's word is more valid, but the fact that white people are the most likely people to accuse us of playing the race card and play down the fact that racism still exists. I also recommend I watched Colin Kaepernick's biopic. And, number one, I liked it a lot. I liked his take on his experiences. I often wonder, I do kind of wonder how his parents felt about his adoptive parents felt about it. I think it was good, that I don't believe he was being disloyal or any of that by sharing his story. I just wonder, how they felt. It seemed like they were very encouraging, parts of his story where, they helped him make his goals. So he didn't experience what a lot of us experience in our homes when we're trying to meet goals and achieve things. But one of the things that I found interesting, the part where he talked about dating a dark-skinned girl and how, his parents was hoping that he would date white. They had a white girl picked out for him and everything. And his interest and his parents called his interest in a dark-skinned black girl a stage. This is when my eyebrow raises when it comes to the whole interracial dating thing. Because especially when you're talking about white people, because I'm always one of those people that I need, in order for a white man, because I'm only into grown men, step to me, I have to know that you see me as equal to you. Okay, he would have to be showing me a whole lot of different things than what white men have showed me in the past. And if you're a black woman, you kind of know what I'm talking about, especially if you're in my age group or older. Okay, I need for a man to be showing me something different. Also, the stuff that he went through when he was experiencing racism, this is one of the things that causes me to raise the eyebrow when I find out that white people are, all gung-ho for adopting a child that is not their character. This is not a white child that is dipped in a different color or flavor of color. This is a Asian, African-American, African. They are the color that they are. And if you are going to adopt a child that is going to be a different ethnicity, even if it's 50%, you need to teach them how to love themselves, that ethnicity, and to be proud of who themselves, because you are one of the first defenses between them and a very racist world. Okay? And so teaching your children to be proud of who they are, regardless of color, kind of shields them from that. And it makes them know that they're a worthy person, regardless of what a white supremacist may have been taught to think of them. So this is another reason why not divesting. This is another reason why I'm anti-divest. I'm not even secretly tempted to choose to divest. One of the reasons why I choose not to divest is because I don't think as a black woman that is teaching you to love yourself black. I don't believe that it's the way to teach yourself how to be a healthy Black woman and how to love yourself Black. If you have to separate yourself from your own community in order to find love, I just don't think that that's the way. I think that's extremely toxic. I also think that the divest movement has come up across with some very horrible teachings about Black men. Okay, now let me say this. I am pro-Black and still have the ability to be objective enough to know when my own men are wrong or headed in a wrong direction. Okay. Telling Black women to leave the community and to refuse to give birth to a Black man is a bit toxic. Okay. I remember back in the day when I think it was China had adopted the whole making the women abort if they were carrying a baby girl and different stuff like this. That's toxic too. And it's toxic because at some point the baby boys, and they are now complaining because they have baby boys, they have boys that don't have anyone to mate with. God designed for men and women to come together to mate and make children and raise children together for a reason. So I think it's extremely toxic when either side, male or female, decides that they don't want the other one to live. So yeah, I have a real problem with the whole don't refuse to give birth to them thing that is being birthed in the divest community. So Anjanette is not a divester and does not want to and will not be forced to. Yeah, I can hand a divester their head too. If you don't want to be bothered with Black men no more, then cool. But don't force other people to not want to be bothered because you don't. Like I've said in the past, I think that this divest movement has shades of Rosewood and some of these other different massacres that have occurred to other Black communities. I believe it is a subtle way to basically get rid of our community by making sure that we don't mate with each other anymore. So if I had to choose, I would choose to stay Black. So I'm going to be back live on Monday night, and I'm going to talk about some of these teachings that I'm hearing coming forth out of, an extremely troubled denomination. So let me say this. If you are saved, you're saved. You're not saved based on somebody else acknowledging it. And you're not Black based on somebody else acknowledging it. You're not saved or Black based on how other people feel about you. And I say that because there are many people who are trying to, Satan is using many people to try to make people feel like they're not saved anymore because they're trying to recruit them to their denomination. And, part of that is, the whole not Black enough movement. You ain't Black if you ain't doing such and such. Now, we do stuff like this where we're joking and, kidding around with one another, because I have a few things that I'm like, girl, that ain't coming out of no Black home. And I say it and, say it jokingly or whatever, with humor. And really it's with humor. But there are people out there that are seriously trying not to acknowledge somebody else's Blackness. I'm like, you can't do that. And it's the most annoying conversation that I have ever had. And I hate that conversation. I really do, because it's annoying. It's very annoying. Okay. And it's based mainly on a lot of racist tropes about black people. I had somebody try to tell me that I was the whitest black person that they ever met. They were white. And I was just like, first of all, most of the stuff that you're basing my blackness on is extremely racist. And since you belong to the culture that has made up most of the racist stereotyping about my people, I'm not really trying to hear you tell me whether and how black I am. So if you're white trying to tell somebody else how black they are, please have several seats, because I'm not trying to hear it. If I'm not trying to hear that ignorance out of my own people, I'm certainly not trying to hear it from none of y'all. Anyway, it looks like I stayed on here a little longer than I was anticipating, because I, got a little ranty there and got a little off topic. But I'm going to stay on the anti-divest thing for a minute, because, I don't feel like the Holy Spirit is moving me on from it. I think that there are some denominations that are tied up in it. I think that there is a little bit of human trafficking attached to it. Because trust me, when people want to do stupid stuff, they always seem to want to start with women first. And it would be lovely if people would quit coming for women. One of the things that I am learning, because I'm still, watching some of these old sitcoms from back when I was younger. And a lot of it, I'm learning what we've already been taught. And I say that because I'm learning, I'm trying to think of how to say this. I am learning how far we've come and how far we've evolved as far as our attitudes toward women's rights, racism, even LGBTQ community type stuff. Just how ignorant we were back in the day about a lot of things. I was telling my mother earlier, I looked at an episode of Love American Style. And then, and that was after I watched a show that was on when I was younger called Wait Till Your Father Gets Home. And it's, anime. It was The Simpsons of its day. I'll put it that way. It was The Simpsons of its day. And when I looked it up, I think it was only on for like a couple of seasons. But I really, like I said before, when you're talking about equal rights and women's rights, and I'm going to continue to say this and belabor this point because it's very true. When you're talking about women's rights, and when you're talking about the issue of diversity and women from different cultures, one reoccurring theme is power. But another reoccurring theme is recognizing that your walk is not like the next woman's walk, and being deeply sensitive to the impact that culture has on our viewpoint of certain things like marriage. I listened to another YouTuber talk about men and how they weaponize resources, acting as though, who has the money makes the rules, or who has the gold makes the rules. And so, being able to have that fathering effect and be that, person for your family, and not think that you are the one who runs things just because you're making the money. And how prevalent it is, even in the episode of Wait Till Your Father. First of all, the saying, wait till your father gets home. I'm like, I don't think many black women would have survived, raising children and having to, the saying of wait till your father gets home is because, he was considered to be the disciplinarian in the family. That whole dynamic of head of household that was alive during the time that the show was made. And so when you see some of this old stuff, I challenge you to look at some of the religious morals that more, forays that were alive, the viewpoints on women, the viewpoints on children, the viewpoints on racism, because a lot of racism, a lot of bigotry in both camps. I've been looking at Sanford and Son and the way he treated Lamont's friend Julio. And not only Julio, but also Achu, the Pat Morita character. Now, these are not reflective of how Red Fox felt his own self, because I think the last two wives that he had before he passed away were Asian. So he wasn't even, I would have to look into his dating history or whatever, but I think he was kind of all across the board. But a lot of people in my parents' age group had parents that were very bigoted and very isolated from other ethnicities, and very, they didn't fool with each other that much. They barely lived on the same side of town as each other, much less mixed a lot. And when they mixed a lot, they had that understanding that, they weren't the same color. I mean, it's hard to explain that, but it was like there seemed to be mutual bigotry between them. And so I remember talking to my mother earlier, and I was like, your generation was going through some mess as far as, freedom and sexuality and different other stuff like that. One of the episodes of Love American Style talked about the pill. So the pill was a very controversial thing when it was first, even contraception was a very controversial topic. The right of women to be able to control how many children they have, or really married couples, because the majority of people at that time were married, because they were still, the pill. I remember reading several books about that, works of fiction, of course, about that time period when the pill was first introduced, and how many doctors wouldn't even prescribe the pill to anybody that wasn't married. It was for married women only. And you have a lot of churches. I know the university that I got my BA from was Catholic, private Catholic. And one of the things that got explained in our human sexuality class, taught by a very distinguished woman named Ann Crimmings, Dr. Ann Crimmings, was that, according to Catholic teachings, every time you come together sexually with your spouse, you have to be open to the possibility of being able to conceive. So anything that prevents you from being able to conceive is considered, not a good thing. So I'm like, here I am, with my black and evolved self, hearing all this, and I'm like, what? There are still religions that don't believe in women using birth control? I thought that was over with a long time ago. So the pill was a very controversial topic during that time. So like I said, when you're talking about black women and white women especially, you have to recognize that the thing that you think might be a good thing may not be considered a good thing by another woman who's also fighting for equality. And so, like I said myself, even though I'm a born-again Christian, and most born-again Christians don't believe in abortion, I still, as a black woman who is born again, I still am very suspicious of the whole overturn of Roe v. Wade, because many of the people who are on the right are not right. Their ties to white supremacy have me very suspect, and I do believe that I do believe that it is a rolling back of the clock. I do believe that there are people who, if they could take away our rights to vote, they would. So we really need to pray and look into some of this. And yes, the divest movement can be part of taking away your rights. Anytime someone is not wanting to allow you the right to marry on your own terms, or is trying to arrange marriages, because it's a cover for that too. Anytime someone is trying to arrange marriages for you and doesn't want you to have any control over your body, or doesn't want you to have any control over who you have sex with or who you procreate with, you need to look at that person with one eyebrow raised. So that's also another reason that I'm not in favor of the divest movement. Because it just looks like, well, let me pick that one over there. Like, I don't know you. And, I have met white guys that have, people act like because you've never dated white or never dated out that you're completely ignorant and this, that, and the other. I have had white guys. I've never dated white guys. I've had opportunities to date white guys and different other ethnicities of guys, including Latin. Okay. And most of the reasons why it didn't head in that direction are for the same reasons that it doesn't head in that direction with a lot of black guys for me. Person's character was off. There was something going on with that person. And so don't feel like you're missing out on don't let the devil get inside your head and make you feel like you're missing out because you're not going interracial. You could go interracial and find that there's nothing about that person that appeals to you and that they're just as bad as a black person. If I'm across the color line, you got to be showing me something different than what the men that my own color have been showing me. Okay, that's number one. You can't be as bad. You cannot be as bad as anybody that I would date my own color and then think I'm across that line. That's just nuts. And a lot of women are doing it. You're just doing it because they're white. You're not doing it because you're trying to get a different experience. So, you just have to be careful with that. So I'm going to go ahead and for the 99th time, I'm going to go ahead and get off of here. But Monday, I'm going to try to stay on topic. I'm going to talk some more about why I'm anti-divest. I'm anti-divest. I'm not anti-interracial dating. I'm just anti-divest movement. Okay. And like I said before, they're two different things. They're not the same. They're not mutual. You can be in a interracial relationship and still maintain very strong ties to your ethnicity. And the bad thing is that that this seems to be aimed at black women. I don't see nobody telling Latin women to divest. I don't see nobody telling white women to divest. I don't see anyone telling any other ethnicity of women to divest except black women. And, the interesting, I think over the weekend, I'm going to pray over a lot of these situations and why, there seems to be, seem like black people have had even more warfare after being in this country. Okay, so, the meaning of some of this stuff and why the devil is so on black women. I think that we're experiencing a lot of, post Jim Crow era type stuff. So, but I just wanted to make sure this wound up being longer than I thought it was going to be, because I was anticipating just talking to y'all for like maybe 15 minutes. Wound up being longer than that. But I'm going to be back live Monday night at midnight. This seems to be a really good time for me to talk. You guys have a good weekend. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your time with your family. I am the grandmother of a pre-K, pre-kindergartner. So he has had 3 days. He has had 3 days of pre-K this week. I am extremely proud of him and don't ever want any harm to come to him. But I am very proud of him. I've been trying to talk to him about, he'll probably be more forthcoming as the days, as he has more, days, in it. My daughter said she was going to send me some footage of him in class. And so, she said he's very popular. He's making a lot of friends. So we're going to see how this goes. Anyway, you guys be blessed. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your loved ones. Try not to get into any trouble. Try to party responsibly. Love you, and I will see you on Monday.